Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Charmed Season 3, Episode 15, Just Harried. The episode in a nutshell is just a brief summary of what happened within this episode. So we start the episode with Grams helping Prue and Phoebe to set up the wedding arch and all of the decorations that can be set up the day before in the foyer of the manor for Piper's wedding, which is taking place the next day, and Grams will be presiding over it as a high priestess. And Piper comes in, loves the room and everything that they've done with it, but Prue is visibly tired, and so she is encouraged to go to bed. That night, she dreams that she is in a bar, and she's been having a recurring dream of going to the bar, and while she's there, she meets TJ, who is a man that she is having a bit of a affair with, and she plays pool. She wins the pool game, and the loser has to pay her $20, house rules. Initially, he doesn't want to pay her, but TJ steps in, and she is given the money. She then realizes that Prue's about to wake up, so she leaves the bar, but the man who gave her the $20 wants the money back, and he comes to try to take it, so she hits him, and after she hits him, she then disappears, and we find out that this was Astral Prue. The next morning, Piper wakes up to her bed covered in rose petals, and she's giggling, she's happy. Phoebe brings her breakfast in bed. Prue comes in as well, and Prue again looks tired, and Piper, she starts giggly, but then she starts to worry, and she notes that if one thing more goes wrong, that she was going to self-sabotage the wedding and call the whole thing off, that it wasn't meant to be, and both Phoebe and Prue promise nothing's going to go wrong, and they continue to get things prepared for the wedding, get all like the new, old, borrowed blue things, and basically keep everything on track so that nothing goes wrong for Piper while Piper gets ready for the day. However, Prue is still visibly tired. Phoebe worries about it, especially when Prue does hand over the control over to Phoebe so that she can go and take a nap. Meanwhile, back at the bar, the man that attacked Prue is found dead, and the CCTV footage shows that Prue had hit him, though she didn't have a knife in the footage, but TJ says she would never have murdered him. Meanwhile, a different biker from the bar says that he saw Prue murder with his own eyes, and so she then is being looked for by the police and on the radar for being wanted for the murder. Back at the manor, everyone's been wishing that Patty could be there, but Grams had said that, the only reason she was allowed there was that they needed a high priestess, and she was therefore there to officiate the ceremony. But as a reward for, or an apology for everything that the elders had put Leo and Piper through in their relationship, Patty is sent back for the day of the wedding to be able to be there for Piper and her sisters. And, she has an emotional moment with Piper. Then Phoebe and Prue walk in and see her, and they have emotional moments as well, where Patty says what she had wanted to tell them, that she was proud of them, that she wasn't worried about them. Like, for example, she says that she always knew Piper would be the first to get married because she's the heart of the family, that Prue's done such a good job being responsible for everyone and looking out for her sisters. And then, like, that Phoebe, despite, her history, she always knew that she would come around and do well and blah, blah, blah. And again, she was never worried because on the day Phoebe was born, she got a premonition through Phoebe of this moment of her standing there with all of them grown up and preparing for a wedding and knew that everything would work out fine, which is really great. We then basically go downstairs to start the wedding. Cole arrives, Leo and Victor are ready, and Daryl arrives. Daryl, when he does arrive, warns Prue that, she may be wanted for murder. Oh, wait, I skipped a part. My bad. So, before Patty arrives, Phoebe sends Prue for a nap. During that nap, she goes back to the bar. TJ warns her that the police are after her, and she does give him her name finally, which she hadn't before. Anyways, back to where we were. The wedding starts. Patty arrives. Piper comes down the stairs. Daryl arrives. Victor walks Piper down the aisle. The ceremony is set to begin, and then TJ crashes the wedding. On his motorcycle, Astral Prue comes out and gets on the back of his bike, and they drive away, which leaves everything in ruins. And this is when Piper decides to call off the wedding. Like her own sister, not even a demon, has destroyed her wedding decor, made the cake fall. The motorcycle did quite a bit of damage to the decor, and basically she's done. She apologizes to Leo. She says, like, she can't do it. Wedding's off, and she leaves the house going to P3. Everybody breaks into teams. Leo and Cole go to the bar to try to find the real killer because they know it won't be Prue. Phoebe goes to the Book of Shadows to try to bring Astral Prue back and figure out what's happening to Prue. And Victor and Patty go to the bar, P3, in order to locate Piper. And Grams unfortunately has to go back up because she was only there to officiate the ceremony, so if the ceremony isn't happening, she's got to go. So she leaves. So starting with the bar, Leo and Cole end up in the bar. Cole says part of his demon's powers is being able to tell which humans are evil and therefore susceptible to demonic influence, and that he does notice one of the guys in the bar has fresh blood on his hands. Outside of the bar, he confronts him and then turns into the demon Balthazar in order to intimidate him into the confession. Leo brings Daryl. Daryl then is there to get the confession. He still has the knife that he used, and so the real killer is caught. On Phoebe's side, in the Book of Shadows, she is able to summon Prue's astral self from the park where she is with TJ and they are sharing a moment. But then, of course, she runs into the woods when she feels herself being summoned and is brought back to Phoebe. And Phoebe talks to Astral Prue, figuring out that Astral Prue is the repressed desires of Prue, who has always pushed down her own desires in favor of helping her sisters, of being the responsible one. And Phoebe basically lets Astral Prue know that her and Piper, they got to live out the love that she's jealous of and have their dreams come true and have the passion and purpose in their life because Prue was there for them. And that now that they're fine, it is okay for Prue to go after her own dreams, to find her own love, to basically stop repressing her own desires, that they're fine now, so it's Prue's turn. She can, do that, and Astral Prue feels the weight of it off, agrees to go back, and then Prue wakes up and thanks Phoebe for everything. But then the power line is promptly cut, and Prue is arrested by the cops and brought in for the murder. Then moving on to the club, we find Victor and Patty. They work together to talk to Piper. Piper basically uses them as an example of why she thinks marriage might be cursed or won't work out. But Patty and Victor work together, and especially Victor, to basically tell her that, they did love each other. It didn't work out, but had they not loved each other, their three daughters, Piper, Phoebe, would not exist, and that maybe their destiny was simply to come together to create them, and that, they are the best things that ever happened to them, and so on and so forth, and that, her and Leo, they're perfect for each other, they're meant to be, blah, blah, blah. Piper, however, says she wants to be alone, so Patty and Victor leave. She goes into the back of the club. And so those three side quests are completed, and eventually everyone comes back to at 5 to midnight. Everyone is gathered. Grams comes down to take Patty, but luckily that is when Daryl and Prue arrive back, and they are followed by Piper, who comes in ready to get married. And unfortunately, the power line was cut, so they have no music. So Grams sets off wind chimes to play a musical tune. And then they don't have lights, so Leo sends some orbs up, which then turn into golden lights that, sparkle and glitter above them. They have their ceremony, they say their vows, and then when they share their first kiss as husband and wife, the little glowing orbs above them burst into almost like fireworks, and little glitters of gold rain down on them and the party guests, and it is a beautiful ceremony. The wedding is successful, and Piper and Leo are married. It's now time to rank the episode, and as always, we'll be ranking on our two ranking lists. The mostly objective ranking list, which is void emotion, but bias and judgment can still apply, and then the personal ranking list, which is the emotional response and entertainment value of the episode. Bringing us to our mostly objective rank values, and I highlighted those I felt applied to this episode. So to start off with, we obviously have our single episode supporting character introduction, which is TJ, which is worth 1 point. We then have a supporting relationship development, which is Prue and TJ, which is worth 2 points. Now, they don't officially end or regress within this episode, so I haven't counted that, though it should be noted that we do not see TJ again, so it can be assumed off screen that that relationship ended. However, throughout this episode, they've been seeing each other. Astral, Prue, and TJ have been seeing each other at the bar, having a fling, a, no strings, no names, attached fling. And then when she is suspected of murder, he sticks up to her sticks up for her to the cops, and then waits for her at the bar when she comes back in order to warn her. She then gives him her name as she's being arrested by the cops. However, then Prue wakes up, so she evades arrest. Then when she is then she does that well then she gives him her name, so then he's able to find her. He crashes the wedding. Takes Astro Prue out. They hide out in the park to evade arrest from the cops, and also to have their fling. And he's basically kind of like, he doesn't need much, but he just wants to spend time with her. And she talks about how she's living moment to moment, but then of course she feels herself being summoned, runs away, and that's the last time we see him. Though it does look like they did have a pretty good relationship up until that point. We then have our successful emotional impact. And this, of course, is when Patty is sent down for the wedding. Obviously, Piper is very, very emotional about it, and very good at emoting that emotion to the audience, which is one of the reasons why it was so successful. And then, of course, they have their sappy moments of, Patty telling them all of the things that she wanted to tell them, that she's proud of them, etc. I went over this in the summary. And that she was there for the wedding day, and that was all very emotional. Successfully so. Then, also worth 3 points, we have our impactful / memorable moment / line / etc., which is, of course, the magical wedding. So the first wedding, it was just an ordinary wedding, and it was still beautiful, and it would have been beautiful had it succeeded, but it obviously got destroyed. But I think the wedding they ended up having was so much more memorable and impactful because of the magical element, the using the magic to create the music from the wind chimes, the beautiful golden orbs flying around at the top, like near the ceiling to give everything like a soft glow, the ceremony itself with, like the rope binding their hands, their vows were beautiful. Like I felt like the wedding they got was the wedding they were meant to have, because even though the original wedding would have been beautiful, the one with all of the magical elements just felt so perfect. And I'm going to give a few spoilers, but even because they are so magical and even their like firstborn is so magical, and it's a white lighter and a witch, like it just the magical elements I felt like they needed to be there. So I was really, really, really glad that her first wedding was ruined so that we could have the magical wedding that we got. And of course, it is a very memorable moment. It's their wedding day, it's the magic of it, it's the beautiful way that magic was incorporated into it. Absolutely a perfect scene, and so definitely worth those 3 points. Then we have our multi-season main character growth, which has to do with Prue, but also a little bit with Phoebe as well. So obviously we learn that Prue's astral self has taken on a life of its own and has in her dreams while she's sleeping escaped to live out a free life, free of responsibility, of control, etc., etc. And Phoebe then has to basically call Prue's astral self, and she figures out what is going on with Prue. She gives the pep talk or the counseling to Prue. This is where her therapist side comes out, and she basically tells Prue that, you know, they're fine now, that she doesn't have to repress herself, that she doesn't need to be so in control that she literally tears herself apart. And so we get the therapist Phoebe growth, but also Prue having a realization about herself and then also being able to move past that, come back together as herself, hopefully with a new mindset going forward to prevent her from tearing herself apart again in the future. And that is worth 4 points. We then have the main relationship development, which of course is that Piper and Leo get officially married, finally succeeding in the marriage that they should have had, and it's amazing. But that doesn't mean that it is not without its negatives. So the first negative was the character regression of Prue, in that Prue lost control of her astral projection power. One of the things that is kind of a hallmark in this series is that once they get their powers, they at first don't really have much control over them, but as they use them and the more that they have the power, the longer they have the power for, they do gain control over that power. And in previous episodes, Prue was showing that she had control over her astral projection power. However, in this episode, we see that that is no longer the case. The astral self has taken a life of its own, and Prue is no longer in control of it. And so this is a regression as far as her ability to control her powers. And that was, again, -1. Then we, of course, have the negative messaging or behavior, which is the fact that TJ drove a motorcycle into somebody else's home, ruined the decor, and crashed a wedding in order to take Astral Prue out. Like, that is just terrible. And then Piper was devastated to the point that she wanted to call off the wedding because it was not even a demon, like evil, that ruined her wedding. It was her own sister who ruined her wedding, which was, very traumatizing for Piper and also like really rude of TJ. I mean, he could have come to the door or something. Like, you didn't have to drive a motorcycle through someone else's house. I mean, you don't drive motorcycles indoors. Like, absolutely terrible behavior. But I understand why it was there for plot purposes. Doesn't make it positive, though. And then finally, we have a minor continuity error, which Honestly, this series has started to become known for. Melinda, they did not have her character fleshed out when they brought her in. Like, she came in season 1. The Witch is Back was the episode, and they brought in Melinda. And Melinda had a daughter, and because she had a daughter, she allowed herself to burn, and she was obviously in a relationship with a warlock at the time with passion and heat, and he had stolen her powers, and she cursed him into the locket. However, of course, when the season first started, they talked about how Melinda had prophesied the coming of the Charmed Ones as she burned, but then obviously that was retconned because they wanted her to have not said anything when she burned to save her daughter, who so that they wouldn't think her daughter was a witch, and that's why she didn't reveal herself or use her powers to escape. So they retconned themselves even in The Witch's Back. There was continuity area. And now they had Melinda Warren's original ceremonial cut from her wedding that they were going to give to Piper as her something old. And it's like, well, Melinda didn't seem to be married, honestly. Like, she had a daughter, but she was in a relationship with a warlock that seemed to be more of a fling. She wasn't married to the warlock. So either they're saying she was married, widowed, and then was in a relationship with a warlock, or maybe she, well, she couldn't have gotten married after the warlock because he was the one who had her be burned. So it's like, when exactly was she married? Because in The Witch's Back, it was not indicated that she was married, though it was indicated that she had a child that she was saving by allowing herself to burn and not using her powers. But like, it didn't indicate that she was married. So I was just a bit confused. Now, like I said, giving grace, it is possible that they off screen made up lore that they did not tell us as the audience. That, like I said, maybe she was widowed, and that's when she got into a relationship with the warlock. Michael, I think his name was. But they don't tell us as the audience. So, from the audience perspective, the information that we have available to us, there was no indication that she was married at any point, and we got to meet the character Melinda in The Witch's Back, and she didn't mention anything about being married there. In fact, she was in a relationship with the warlock, so at the time of her death. So while there is grace that they might have made some changes off screen, if you don't let your audience in on it, they have no way of knowing that. Therefore, it is a continuity error as far as my audience perspective is concerned. And that leaves us with a 10 out of 10 episode and exactly 10 points. Now, as a reminder, on our mostly objective ranking list, whenever more than one episode has the same score, it is ranked just in the order the episodes aired in. So the ranking so far is in first place, The Honeymoon's Over, Magic Hour, Sleuthing with the Enemy, The Good, the Bad, and the Cursed, and then this episode just tarried is fifth, followed by All Hallows Eve, Coyote Piper, Blinded by the White Lighter, Once Upon a Time, We All Scream for Ice Cream, Power Outage, Bride and Gloom, Wrestling with Demons, Sight Unseen, and then in last place so far is Primrose Empath. Now, my personal opinion on the episode is encapsulated with what we had seen with the mostly objective ranking as well. Piper and Leo are my favorite couple throughout the entire series. I love their love story. I love that they are the ones who last. I love that every conflict they have in their relationship, they manage to fight for each other, fight to be together, and do ultimately end up together. Spoilers. So I love that this is like their milestone of getting married. I love that it's their wedding episode. I even liked the Prue plot. I liked how she was going through the character issues, how the astral self took on a life of its own. And most especially, I loved the ending of the episode with the magical wedding. I believe I pointed out earlier that that is the wedding they deserved. That it was the second one. While I wouldn't have been disappointed if the first one had worked out, the second wedding with all the magical elements being in there. I think that was just so perfect. I loved her dress, I loved her hair, I loved the decor, I loved everything about this wedding. I thought it was beautiful and amazing. I love that they get their happy moment of being married. I wasn't fond, like the biggest thing I wasn't fond of was really like the motorcycle through the house, and only because that is just so unbelievable. Like people do not drive motorcycles into people's houses. It would be a terrible world if people just randomly did that, honestly. But at the same time, I'm like, that's a minor issue, but everything was perfect. Even like Cole coming in, working together with Leo, the whole family coming together to save the wedding once it was ruined, everybody planning, Piper's giggliness when she found the rose petals on the bed, Phoebe bringing her breakfast in bed, like everything in this episode, I loved. I thought it was amazing, and that is why it is my favorite episode so far of the season, and I definitely gave it a 10 out of 10. And I don't really have anything to add because I've already gone over everything in the summary, in the mostly objective. I'm just adding in this personal part how much I loved it. It was amazing. And that is why, so far, it is in first place, Just Harried, Once Upon a Time, We All Scream for Ice Cream, All Hallowell's Eve, Bride and Gloom, Magic Hour, Blinded by the Witch Lighter, or not Witch Lighter, White Lighter, Blinded by the White Lighter is in 7th, then 8th, The Honeymoon's Over, Sleuthing with the Enemy, Primrose Empath, Sight Unseen, Power Outage, The Good, the Bad, and the Cursed, Wrestling with Demons, and last place so far is Coyote Piper. Alright, and that brings us now to our series ranking so far, which is our mostly objective ranking has Season 2 in first with 75%, Season 1 in second with 73.18%, Season 3 so far has earned 119 out of 220 points. Then moving on to our personal ranking, we have Season 1 in first with 71.50%, Season 2 with 56.82%, and Season 3 so far has 113 out of 220. With that, we've now rewatched and ranked Charmed Season 3, Episode 15, Just Harried. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.